I mentioned that Chris Cuomo, one of the hosts on CNN, who calls himself a reporter, was ripping Donald Trump. By the way, he ripped his disaster relief efforts in Puerto Rico, ripped him for saying he had the votes to pass a health care plan. What makes a reporter feel that he can offer his opinion and then put on his hat as a reporter, and we're supposed to ignore the fact that he made a partisan crack, is beyond me. But here again is what Cuomo said that Trump is saying to NFL owners.
But maybe even uglier than that. It does sound a little bit, and obviously you can come at me on Twitter about this, like he's saying control your dog. Control your dog to the owners.
Is that something a reporter is supposed to say? What Trump is saying to the owners, quote, control your dog. I mean, who says something like that? Walter Cronkite? David Brinkley? Chet Huntley? I mean, even Dan Rather, when he was anchoring, wouldn't say something like that. Where are we now? And this whole network, CNN, my goodness.
None of that sounds very funny anymore or even far-fetched at this point. So at a volatile moment like this, the last thing this country needs is more demagoguery, especially racial demagoguery, which always leaves the deepest and longest-lasting wounds. On the other hand, whipping people into a frenzy of fear and rage is a guaranteed ratings bonanza, and CNN can never resist that. Watch how that network takes the controversy over the national anthem at football games and turns it into a terrifying story about race hatred.
If anyone actually believes this is about the flag, then you must believe Rosa Parks' protest was about a bus. Think about that.
When he says, he was really telling the owners, like the owners or the plantation owners and the guys playing the league, you know, they're on the plantation, you can't say anything. And so the thing has really escalated.
It does sound a little bit, and obviously you can come at me on Twitter about this, like he's saying control your dog. Control your dog to the owners. And now he says they're fearful of the players. So he is setting up the ugliest kind of tension that you can. And I know when you say control your dog, it's got a lot of racial overtones to it. So does this situation. Yeah. I don't know how you can look at it and not see how it's racial.
Dogs? Who said anything about dogs? Nobody did, but it doesn't matter. The image is horrifying, and that's the point. You can't turn away from that. Now, do you hate and fear your neighbor a little more by the end of that segment? Of course you do. Imagine millions of people watching that kind of thing all day long. What would happen to the country? We're finding out now. Monique Presley is an attorney.
Okay, so control your dog. Spike Lee referred to them plantation owners. Just in round numbers, Spike Lee referred to the owners as plantation owners, which means the players must be field workers. Just in rough terms, roughly what did the plantation owners pay Kunta Kinte annual salary? I mean, how stupid is that? My goodness. Now, there is a long-time employee at the stadium where the Buffalo Bills play. It's called the New Era Field. His name is Eric Nickisher. He said he put a lot of good years in, quote, and a lot of bad ones in, close quote. But he posted on Facebook in response to the Bills' protest. The players taking a knee, quote, I was finally pushed to my limit today and had to quit. I cannot work in a place where multimillionaires cry that they are oppressed. End of quote. His post included a photo of himself leaving the station while wearing a patriotic T-shirt. He wrote, quote, I will miss the brotherhood I had with my coworkers on the cart crew. He was interviewed from his home. Quote, during the national anthem, the song that is about our country, our veterans, who fight and die for us. It's just something I feel you shouldn't disrespect that way. I believe people have the right to protest. I just don't believe that's the proper venue for it. Now, he has another gig, you know. He also works as a court officer with the New York State Courts. The Bills did not respond to requests to give some sort of reaction to this man's quitting. Bills running back LaShawn McCoy, one of the players who protested during the anthem. Here's his reason for protesting. Quote, I can't stand and support something where our leader of this country is just acting like a jerk. Close quote. You are taking a knee because you feel the president of the United States is acting like a jerk. Wow. So we've gone from police brutality to income inequality to Trump is acting like a jerk. Is there anything you won't take a knee for? I would imagine that probably in the prior 8 years, we've had, 5 years of that 8 under Obamacare? I would imagine that the majority of people in those stands watching these games dislike Obamacare. It's never been popular. And for the first time in our nation's history, a president is compelling you to purchase something, whether you want to, whether you can afford it, whether you feel you need it. Yet, did anybody protest the national anthem and take a knee because they felt Obama had violated the Constitution? That he was, quote, acting like a jerk, close quote? What about when Obama said the Cambridge police acted stupidly and the Cambridge police were livid? Anybody take a knee because Obama was, quote, acting like a jerk, close quote? What about when he invoked Ferguson at the United Nations, even though his own DOJ completely exonerated the officer that shot and killed Michael Brown? Anybody take a knee because Obama was, quote, acting like a jerk, close quote? We come back. A bunch of Arabs and Muslims at United Nations were stunned because the UN allowed a former Hamas person to speak, and they did not like what he said. You got to watch this. Hearing it is pretty impressive, but watching these Arab leaders turn around in shock is worth the price of admission. Have that for you when I come back, and you look at the video up on LarryElder.com. I'm Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
We don't have time for charlatans, and we don't have time for flim-flam. What?
The following has been rated PC for politically correct.
Pay attention, you just may learn something.
It's the Sage, Larry Elder.
You know what gets me about some of these guys? I was on a Chicago radio station this morning, and somebody called in from Naperville, Illinois, and referred to me as a house Negro. And on and on and on. Finally, when he came up for air, I said, may I ask you why I'm a house Negro? And he goes, well, that's because you are saying things a white man, blah, 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 blah. And I said, if I were a white racist, I would have to pay people like you to denounce people like me. I'd have to encourage people like you to denounce people like me. And you do it for free. If Elder is right, and the welfare state has destroyed the black family, has created a situation where now 73% of black kids are born outside of wedlock. And along comes somebody like Elder and says, hey, there's a connection between that and the welfare state. We need to rethink the welfare state. I would want somebody like you to shut him up. I'd have to pay somebody like you to shut him up. If Elder is right, that minimum wage laws have destroyed opportunities for unskilled young black people, and it's true that at one time a black teenager was more likely to have a job than a white teenager, and along comes Elder and says, let's get rid of minimum wage, I would want somebody like you to call him up and call him an Uncle Tom and call him a coon. If Elder is right, that these inner city schools have the worst teachers because there's something called the turkey trot or the dance of the lemon, so that the worst teachers, when parents complain, they send them to another district where parents don't complain, and as a result, you have some of the worst teachers working in areas where the best teachers are needed. And somebody like Elder comes along and says, parents need vouchers so that their kids can get into a school that's safer and where the teachers are better and where the parents care more about education. And along comes Elder, and Elder says, I support this. I would want somebody like you to call him up, denounce him, call him an Uncle Tom, discourage him from having any kind of credibility so that other people don't rethink their allegiance to the Democratic Party that are in bed with the teachers union that don't want vouchers. I would want somebody like you to call him. So please, you are doing the bidding of white racists in America, and I'm a coon, I'm an Uncle Tom. It's absurd. So when I get calls from people like this, notice they never say I'm factually wrong. You and Thomas Sowell are factually wrong when you talked about the labor force participation rate. They don't say that. You and Thomas Sowell are factually wrong when you talk about the census shows that between 1890 and 1940 or so, black couples were slightly more likely to be married than white couples. As a result, black kids were slightly more likely to be brought into the world with nuclear intact families than whites in those days. They don't say I'm factually wrong. Call me a bunch of names. And this is why there's no self-criticism and self-evaluation and self-reflection within the black community to the degree that there should be. Because anybody that suggests maybe a different way, a different approach, different assumptions, is shouted down, called all sorts of names. It's juvenile. It's preschool. And all it does is make things worse because assumptions are not challenged. And 95% of black people go down like lemmings and pull that lever for the Democratic Party that does not want choice in schools, that wants to raise the minimum wage to $15. Are you kidding me? Even Joe Biden's economist, Jared Bernstein, says $15 an hour is too high and it would hurt people. Is this thing on? But I'm a bad guy. I'm an Uncle Tom. It's juvenile and it's counterproductive and makes things worse.